This episode of Twin Cities Trekkies is brought to you by Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor before, let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that help you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. You can easily make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership required. They'll also help you to distribute your podcast so it can be heard on many different platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's all you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, welcome to episode 3 of Twin Cities Trekkies. I am Wes.
And I'm Kenzie.
And today we're going to be talking about the Starfleet uniforms, and hopefully that will that throughout the entire franchise, and hopefully we can divulge into a discussion about the fashion of Star Trek, because actually this is actually a topic that you want to talk about, Kenzie. I remember you off recording, you had said that you wanted to talk about the fashion of the franchise. So I think that's a perfect opportunity to talk about the Starfleet uniforms first, and then talk about maybe some of the alien costumes we've seen over the past 55 years. Because they've ranged from not much at all to very elaborate.
Yeah, well, and then even down to like what different races wear, what certain characters wear. Like It's an interesting take on what everyone's wearing. Like it's kind of cool just to see like what the decision making was behind that and how it affects the storyline and how the episodes go.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to let you guys know how to get in touch with us. It's Twin Cities Trekkies podcast at gmail.com is our email address. So if you have any episode suggestions or anything like that, or any feedback on our episode, you can email us. You can also comment on the YouTube channel, Twin Cities Trekkies. You can find that pretty easily on YouTube. You can also find the Facebook page. It's facebook.com/TC Trekkies Pod. And we are available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, and I think a few other ones too. But you also can go to anchor.fm/twin-cities-trekkies. So you can listen to us pretty much anywhere. And we're also available on TuneIn. So that was pretty nice to have that too. So, but eventually, since we are on anchor.fm, they will be hopefully available on Apple Podcasts soon. So once you're able to get on Apple Podcasts, you can give us a star rating and a written review, and hopefully we can read them later on. You can read the feedback, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it, and it helps others to find the podcast if you give a 5-star rating. So it does help that. So
okay. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Let's talk about, we have now, as of this recording, the first episode of this podcast has come out. Let's talk a little bit about that. Have any of you, have you got any feedback regarding the first episode, Kenzie?
Mostly just around audio issues, and then people being interested on where I was from. I had a couple of people reach out being like, oh, yeah, what small town? Like, we're at Minnesota. And it's like, oh, I guess, yeah, I never actually noted where I was from. And that I was from Montevideo, Minnesota, and Western Minnesota. So it was cool to have people are listening to the stories and being like, oh, I know where that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've gotten the same kind of feedback. Granted, the one thing that everyone kind of had an issue with was the audio. And that is because when we started recording this podcast 2 weeks ago, um, we had issues with Zoom. It was because I used a dorky headset, and it, and it just went
And it is classic technology, but
technology issues. So
it's the demo gods. It's when you actually need to demo something or do something, the technology will fail you.
yes, definitely, and especially on a time when you really want to have it working, and you want everything to go smoothly as heck, and and it doesn't. So unfortunately, I mean, but when this episode is on this when we're recording this, episode 2 will be available, and I did edit that one yesterday, as a which was that Friday, and the audio sounds a lot better, so at least 50 times better. So
Yeah.
and it's gonna be a fun, interesting episode. I mean, I didn't have to do much, which was nice, you know. I mean, but I like adding music and other things as well. So and that kind of thing. So anyway, thanks for all who have listened so far, and make sure you tell your friends and family too. Share it. We want you guys to we want this podcast to have a huge listenership down the road. So um,
Yes.
we want people to say, hey, this is a really cool Trek podcast. Here, check this one out. And they live in the Twin Cities of Minnesota. Hey, it's like
Yeah.
you got a little Midwestern flair with Star Trek. So, share it with your friends and family. We would definitely appreciate you guys, like, share our videos, share the videos on the Facebook page, share the audio, like on your favorite podcast choice. Like you can share it, you can put it on your text messages and stuff like that. So, yeah, we definitely want you to definitely share this around. So because like I said, we want
Yeah.
this thing to grow. Granted, it's small right now. Our audience is small, but we have it bigger down the road. So we want you guys to we want to be. I mean, I know. My goal is to make sure that this podcast, is better than the Minnesota Star Trek Nerd Podcast, which was my former Star Trek podcast.
Yeah.
I want it to be way better than that. So I'm glad. I think you listened to it a few times when I did it, but Mackenzie. So but I want this thing to be bigger.
Yeah.
So definitely. I don't mean to brag about it, but come on. Share it with the friends and family, and we can go for it. That's great. All right. So, I think regarding okay, so we're going to go into the topic now of today's episode, the Starfleet uniforms and the fashion of Star Trek. So, I think we should talk about our favorite Starfleet uniforms first, and then do like a how we feel about the other ones, and then go into that fashion. How does that sound, Kenzie?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, so
We gonna go chronological order. We gonna do these by movies because there's so many different
variations.
uniforms and
Yeah,
variations on the same uniform. Like it starts getting so confusing and hairy when you get into like Next Generation of Deep Space Nine territory,
yeah,
and all
definitely.
those vary just depending on certain episodes and everything. So
All right. So I'm gonna yeah. So because there's so many, like you said, but yeah, I have two favorite Starfleet uniforms actually. It's kind because it kind of ties between because if I had to pick a favorite one, I have a tied. So for the top five or so, or if I had a list of the top five Starfleet uniforms I've seen over the past you know 20 31 years I've been alive watching Star Trek. I only have two favorites, and and then a list of top five. So, it's a top nine between the original series movie uniforms from the Wrath of Khan to the number six, and the ones from First Contact that went through all the way through the end of Voyager. So the gray ones, the gray top
Yeah,
and the black.
yeah. I was gonna
Yeah,
say I like the gray tops. Like that's the one that I enjoyed because I love the flip of making the colors the turtleneck undershirts. Whereas before it was like in Voyager they introduced the gray undershirt and then the uniform itself was the color. But I liked the uniformity of the gray suit and then having a colored undershirt.
yeah, and I love those uniforms, and I also because a famous Star Trek person by the name of Larry Nemecek calls the ones from the Wrath of Khan through the end of the Undiscovered Country. He calls them the Monster Maroons because they are red,
Yep.
and I like those too. But regarding those uniforms, at least from that era, from the '80s and the early '90s, and I'm going like, wasn't it hot?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when I watch like those, I watch like, I watch those movies on and off, like Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, that kind of thing. But and I see those uniforms, and it's like layered upon layer. It's like they would survive well in a Minnesota winter because it's
Yeah.
like
Those
because
are
it's
some
like
heavy,
it's
heavy duty.
heavy. It's got that big giant sweater underneath it, colored sweater, and I'm going like, man, I feel bad for these actors sometimes. I watch it now. I'm thinking of like, the comfort level, especially like William Shatner, for example. uh, he's probably thinking, oh God, this is so hot. Why am I even here? I'm surprised they never did that. Maybe they did it off camera.
Oh yeah. I mean, like hearing some of those stories about them having to deal with like bad uniforms and then having to they'd have to like there was a story about how Kirk for a while had to almost like bind his chest and stuff because of the way the fabric sat on him that it
Yeah.
just badly accentuated his body that they were like we're gonna have to like wrap you up and smooth you down to in order to wear this terrible fabric that looks really futuristic but is not comfortable to wear. And even into something like Next Generation, I think the first couple of seasons, or maybe only the first season, they used spandex, and it was so annoying. And that's where the classic shirt pull happened because he's constantly using that fabric that like was really annoyingly stretchy and it just wasn't comfortable for them to use. So I think they switched to like Garbine or something to
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
suits because they're a little more it looks nicer and it behaves nicer, so then you don't have the characters constantly adjusting their uniforms trying
Hmm.
to figure out how they're gonna like look nice in front of a camera because they're like, okay, this is super annoying, like.
Yeah, from what I understand, the tucked in, straight look, no wrinkle look was actually a Gene Roddenberry thing. I mean, granted, you don't see it very often that you see more wrinkles on the original series uniforms. If you watch the original series through and through, especially like when you see Kirk sitting down in his captain's chair, he's not doing the Picard maneuver because it didn't really matter to him in the 60s, I guess, according to Roddenberry. But you're right, but you see some of those uniforms, like we can go into that old, like the bad uniforms, but 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 we can talk about that in a little bit. But I just want to know what your favorites are. Do you have like a particular favorite other than the First Contact uniforms, Kenzie?
I mean I really love the Voyager uniforms, just like the gray turtleneck underneath, and I just love the uniformity of them. Like I love that it was a pantsuit. I appreciate the original series and their dresses for the women, but it was nice to just have like this whole pantsuit look, and I love the undershirt because that would be more comfortable, I would think, than wearing just like the undershirtless look of Next Generation.
Yeah,
But also
yeah.
just out of like out of technicality, I loved Seven of Nine's outfit because of just the whole process of them having to put her into that outfit. And I always thought that was super cool, despite it being like a very aggressively like look at me outfit. I always loved her just full bodysuits because I'm like that actually is very comfortable if you've ever thrown on a whole jumpsuit.
Okay, my question to you about that, Kenzie, about Seven of Nine's outfit. Do you prefer the first few episode version, the gray, like the silver gray one? That I mean, personally, I think was ugly.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
it was completely ugly, or the ones that came after that, like the brown, the
I
maroon, and the
I like
blue one.
the more chill colors because that silver one was the one that they had to first like a prototype of it, and then sort of like a nod to her like Borg heritage, but it was just this insane cat suit that was just like unbreathable. I mean, like they actually had to construct a whole like corset and structure underneath it, put that on her, and then put the cat suit on because she had like a textured like abdomen on that cat suit. But I just always thought that was interesting because I'm like, what a stark contrast. Like, I mean, like Troy also wore like a cat suit as well, but this was just such an aggressive version of that. And I'm like, hey, nod to deep or not nod to Next Generation, like that's super cool.
Yeah, from what I understand about that first outfit, Jerry Ryan blacked out a few times.
Yeah,
From what I understand.
she couldn't
So
breathe.
she couldn't breathe, so she blacked out a few times on set when they were filming episode like the first few episodes when she was in. We're in that silver catsuit. Thank God they take her out of that after like what episode 5 of season 4.
Yeah, because they would have to.
So
It was time consuming because every time they were done doing a take, they'd have to take her out because she could just wait around in it. And then that's when they started kind of exploring the other suits to be a little more chilled out, so that they wouldn't have to keep constantly like finagling her into the suit.
yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, during that silver jumpsuit that she wore in the first few episodes of season 4 of Voyager, she had to have assistance if she ever needed to use the restroom. So
Yeah,
to take that costume off. So so I mean, thank God that they took her out of that.
yeah,
And I mean, it went away after that episode where Harry Kim was pretty much had the hots for her. So
yeah,
that whole awkward scene, oh God, it's one of Voyager's, in my opinion, one of the most awkward moments ever in Voyager and in the franchise as a whole. So, I mean,
yeah.
it's played for laughs, obviously, because it's Harry Kim. He's got the hots for Seven, and then this whole discussion about okay, let's take off your clothes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they're
But
gonna change that
thank God
up.
it's after that she wears the other colors, and it's like 4 different colors. I think there's like a maroon one, there's a brown one, there's a blue one, and I think there's a black one somewhere in there. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, definitely. So
Yeah, and in itself, I mean, it was like a more of like an over sexualized thing, but so was Diana Troy's like that. I mean, that was like a huge deal with hers too, where she had an outfit transformation throughout the show too.
yeah, she did. Yep. Yeah, in the first season, actually, she wore this like denim jumpsuit. So, and it was, I mean, and then but in the pilot Encounter at Farpoint, she wore the
She wore a
uniform.
skirt uniform.
Yeah, she wore a scant uniform.
Yeah,
It was, yeah, it's like, and then,
one of the few like actual skirted like next generation style uniforms,
hmm
like so she was wearing that, but then it's like after that it was just like the weird like off center cut like cleavage thing. But I remember
yeah,
hearing there was like a whole story about when they were first like writing up her character, and Gene Roddenberry wanted her to be four breasted, like some weird alien that was like that, and they convinced him that no, that's not a good idea, let's not do that, like
yeah,
because that's kind of ridiculous. But then they still went with the very like very interesting outfit choices for her. But then later on in the series, she starts taking up uniforms and actually wearing like a full uniform. But her like classic one is that really pale lavender one that she wears.
Yep.
That actually is like a V-neck, but it's a high V-neck, which is
Yeah. Yeah.
a stray away from her original like weird half, I don't know, side cut off dresses and suits that she wears.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's just I think it was just like, I think that pantsuit in the first season of Next Generation is awful. For
Yeah.
that she wore. So that was like she wore that in at least 15 episodes of season one. And I'm going like, how the heck did you do that? And all right, so going into the ugly, I guess, of the uniforms. You had mentioned about the spandex uniforms of Next Generation. That was in the first two seasons.
Yep.
And it actually was because of Patrick Stewart why they went to the gabardine in
Because of the
season three.
constant pull.
The Picard maneuver.
Yep, the pull.
Yeah, jokingly called the Picard maneuver. Because I guess some of the cast members were experiencing from the first two seasons wearing those spandex uniforms back problems
Yep.
because it would just like stretch on their backs and it would be so hard on them that it'd be like eventually it was just so much damage that it's like if you don't get out of this you're gonna be in serious trouble. So thank God they took them out of those uniforms because they could be kind of ugly. It gives it a
Yeah.
dated look for seasons one and two.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, they got wrinkly and they got very tired looking pretty quick. I
yeah,
mean,
they
like it definitely took them a while. Like in the later seasons, it seems like they had a lot more like the costume design around actually being practical,
hmm
like along with like the characters, where it's like, yes, this is for a show set in the future, but also let's make sure the fabrics are comfortable. I
yeah.
actually really enjoyed J.J. Abrams' Star Trek universe uniforms.
Oh
It's
yeah,
actually in real life the only uniform I actually own is one of those dresses from that because the actual fabric is amazing on them. Like I'd gotten like a replica of the medical officer or the science officer dress, like of the blue one, and it's such a nice fabric and it's breathable but it's structured, and I'm like I could just wear regular clothes in that fabric because it was very nice.
yeah, definitely. I've seen pictures of. I mean, you and I have been friends for at least at least 5 years,
Ages.
ages, and I've seen pictures of you wearing that uniform. So and if you guys don't if you guys aren't aware it's kind of like the one that Carol Marcus wore in Into
Yep.
Darkness. So yeah, I mean those ones are okay, the ones from the J.J. Abrams version which was based on the original series version.
Hmm.
um I mean back in the 60s they had to be colorful because in the 60s color TV was a brand new thing. So, hard to believe now that was it was hard to believe that's like ancient technology to us, color TV. But back in the 60s, it was a brand new thing. So when NBC did air the original series, they wanted the cast to wear color to promote the fact that, hey, we're footing some of the bill to produce this technology for our TVs for the TVs across the country. Why don't you guys wear colored uniforms? And that's what it was. And it went to the joke about the red shirts being killed, uh,
Yeah. Well, and
which
I always thought it was an interesting take, like with the color TV concept, that in the original series, the uniform, like for the commander uniforms, they're olive green,
yeah,
but they come off as gold. So then moving forward, despite the fact that they're actually green, they just decided to go with gold because in the J.J. Abrams retake, they wear yellow, like gold
hmm
outfits. But that's not originally what the color was intended to be. And I always thought
no,
that was an interesting take on that.
yeah, definitely. And they have in the J.J. Abrams version, especially the first two films, Into Darkness and the '09 one, they have the Starfleet arrowhead strewn throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a little fine little Starfleet arrowhead
Yeah, it's all
um,
embossed with that.
embossed throughout the uniform, and it was solid and Beyond. So and it looked like, and the uniforms in Beyond are actually pretty cool too. It's pretty much like a next generation version of, I mean, pardon the pun, next generation version of like the ones from Next Generation, but it has the original series colors. It got the collar and stuff like that with the rank on the collar and on the arms, so on the wrists. So definitely. But then another ugly uniform is the motion pictures, the very first
Mhm.
movie. Those uniforms are ugly, and they didn't like them. The cast didn't like them either. They thought it was bland and
Yeah, like they're weird. Like they almost look like scrubs. I don't even know. Like the coloring is just so off.
yeah, it is so off. And it was like, and I think the Starfleet uniforms in season 3 of Star Trek Discovery are based upon that a little bit. Just gotta take a little creative license because
Yeah.
because they're gray and ugly then too there
Yep.
too. But the Starfleet uniforms in Discovery season 3.
I mean, I took that as a nod, definitely back to the motion pictures uniforms because of just that same like powdery blue gray to like
Yep.
beige shading. I'm like, oh yeah, that feels very much like motion picture uniforms. Even the placement of the epaulets like design and the patterning is kind of like a throwback to that.
Yeah, definitely. And then speaking of Discovery, I did like the jumpsuits that they wore in the ones for Discovery. The uniform color, the vision color was like the silver,
Yeah.
blue and
I think that's
gold.
an interesting take too of just how it is rank told through the uniforms, and I really
Hmm.
like that it was like the blue and gold and silver of like the subtle accents of those uniforms is what determines rank, whereas
Yeah,
you go to the older chronologically later
yeah,
season or later series that it's denoted by the actual just color of the uniform, like your shirt to the undershirt to like
hmm
no difference really at all. Like it's kind of interesting.
yeah. And those colors are based. I think they were based on the first two pilots. There were No Man's Gone before in the cage. Those colors were based upon. So um, especially the cage, because Discovery takes place before the original series, but then moves forward past everything else. Um, but definitely, yeah, I see the what they were trying to do was trying to say like here's what they look like now, in the 20 made in the 21st century, as opposed to 1964 or 65 when the first pilots were made. So, and I took some. I mean, I had a lot of arguments regarding that a few years ago with other Trekkies regarding like, oh, this is supposed to be red, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
and it's kind of
yeah,
interesting that they like each season kind of is a sign of the times of when they were actually made, which is
hmm
kind of funny. Like it's an ode to the time period that they were developed under, because
yeah,
which makes me laugh because it's like you're kind of like adding the own spice of like the 80s or the 90s or the 60s like in all of these uniforms despite them taking place in the future. So I think it's
yeah,
kind of an interesting like way to be like, look, we're in the future, like, but also we're gonna make it look like right now because we can't actually imagine what the fashion would look like then without
yes,
feeling like it looks outlandish or ridiculous. Like it's such an interesting take of like how do you explore what fashion will look like in the future without, because fashion itself defines what we think looks good, and it's hard to in science fiction figure out what would be considered to look normal and good 100 years from now, or like in another century. And it's hard to sell that because your audience is from the current time that it's being developed, so you kind of have to play this weird balancing game of like how do we develop a show that takes place in these years but still sell them on the uniforms where they're not like, I can't take these guys seriously because their outfits are so weird. Like I can't deal with it. And it's just kind of a cool, like what a creative outlet that designers for these series have to take into account to be like, we can't make them look so ridiculous that people are uncomfortable. Like even in it wasn't in the first pilot episode of the original series, they had uh number one, like the lady who was first cast as like second in command wearing pants, right? And then
Yeah.
they didn't like that because they were like, that's odd. We don't like, first of all, where she stands in rank, but also why is she wearing pants? That seems really weird.
Mhm.
And it's sort of this interesting thing of like, oh, so I guess despite this being hundreds of years from now, we can't imagine women wearing pants, which, what a weird thing to argue. Where it's like, well, it's future. So we're saying that at some point women should be allowed to wear pants, right?
Yeah.
But we can't really determine that because people would be upset now watching that. So how do we make it look futuristic and ahead without kind of dismissing our own current trivial cultural things that we hold on to, like women only being allowed to wear dresses? Like, it's kind of a weird thing to like explore and bend the rules around.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know it's kind of crazy, and it was, we had a bunch of sexism back in back then, and that's why they got rid of her too, because it's like, oh gosh, we can't have a woman being second in command of the Enterprise here. So, we can't have a woman. So, but unfortunately now, uh,
Too ahead of its time, despite
yeah,
being it's posing to be ahead of its time. Like, it's again, it's just that weird thing of how to sell a futuristic science fiction thing while being in a certain time period. Like, how
yeah,
do you sell that that's something that could happen in the future without already upsetting people in
yeah.
that current time?
Yeah, and now with Strange New Worlds starting soon to production in Toronto, we're gonna get, a woman in second in command again. So, I mean, we're gonna have number one again. So I'm looking forward. I mean, like we were talking about number one and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to see how that character develops throughout the series. It going on a little bit about what's going on in the future. Like, Stranger Worlds is going to start filming soon. So it's kind of exciting to see what's going to happen with number one, because we don't know very much about her. So, and
Yeah.
I think Rebecca Romaine, who does play number one now, taking over for Majel Barrett Roddenberry, um, who did a fantastic job being number one in the cage, obviously. But definitely, I'm looking forward to see how this character develops, because we don't know much about her, other than the fact that her name is Una now,
Yeah.
which I kind of hoped was gonna be the Pope. I did a I did a prediction episode a long time ago, on my old podcast, saying like, I hope they name the full name is Majel Una. So
That's cool.
to honor both what came before in the novels, because Una was actually a name from the novels for number one, but then Majel to
Yeah.
honor Major Barrett, who played her. So
Hmm.
I'm hoping that's the case. But who knows? Who knows with Strange New Worlds? Who knows? Um, yeah, but definitely. So I
We'll
think we
patiently
should,
wait for those uniforms.
yeah, definitely talk about those uniforms from from the Discovery era Enterprise. Um, you know, I saw a lot of people going like, well, why did you do that? I mean, Kurtzman, why did you not do that? Why did you not do the same colors that were from the cage and where no man has gone before? Well,
Yeah.
maybe this is something I had an argument with. Maybe maybe they were supposed to be those colors, but it kind of like what Gene Roddenberry had said when the motion picture came out in '79, and the Klingons had bumpy foreheads for the first time. And Gene Roddenberry says, "Oh, we wanted to do the bumpy heads for our old show, but we couldn't have the money. Now we
Yeah.
do. Now we do. So here you go." Uh, that's pretty much what I think now, is because maybe they were supposed to be those colors, but then it was 1964 or 65, and it's now 2018 when season 2 is being filmed. Um, so maybe they were supposed to be those colors.
Yeah.
And yeah, so and I do like those uniforms. I mean, I do like the fact they got a call like kind of like you kind of expect them to put a tie on regarding those
Yeah.
regarding the collars from the Discovery uniforms from both the Enterprise and Discovery. You would think they would put like a necktie because it's
Sort of
like
create
because it
ties on everybody. Make it like The Office. Maybe if it was like a white collar setting, like not like a ship. And like imagine if there was like the people who have to work in an office setting for Starfleet. It'd be interesting to see what uniforms they wear. But everybody, even when like in the movies when they're exploring like Starfleet Academy, like everybody's wearing uniforms. So I'm like, is there any like office folk who have to like sit at a table at a computer all day working on something where they have to wear ties, or ties is not a thing, like because they're just a really trivial piece of cloth that no one cares to wear to work anymore.
speaking of neckties, you know what era we forgot to mention is Enterprise
Oh yeah, the blue
jumpsuit
jumpsuits.
with the pockets and stuff. Um, and we forgot to mention that. And the only characters that I've seen wear the neckties are the ones of the Admiralty for Enterprise, because I know Admiral Forrest wore one a few times
Yeah,
and stuff like that. So and they were wearing neckties then too, and oh boy, okay, so they were wearing neckties too. So definitely there. Yeah, so they're definitely wearing neckties then too. So
yeah,
so
definitely lots of variation with the
mhm.
uniforms.
Yeah, lots of variations over the 55 years and stuff like that for the Starfleet uniforms, and who knows with the other shows coming back and stuff like that. I mean, oh, the Picard uniforms, the Picard Starfleet uniforms, you see them around. They were kind of based on All Good Things a little bit, I think. A little bit with the All
Yeah,
Good Things mixed with the First Contact um mix, because they have the com badges from that era
yeah,
that were based on All Good Things, but then the uniforms are a little bit interesting, like the Starfleet uniforms, stuff like that, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, who knows what might come in the future regarding Starfleet uniforms. So,
yeah,
especially with all these new series coming out. Oh, Lower Decks, their uniforms are
yeah,
their
yeah.
uniforms are awesome.
They were sort of like it's like sort of a combination of. I mean, they look a lot like the Next Generation uniforms.
Yep. And they actually have a blend of the one we
Yeah,
actually saw animated First Contact uniforms.
yeah.
So
I
in
don't
the
know. I
in
thought
the in
this was
the
amazing.
yeah in the season 1 finale, and
Yeah, they've done a really good job of
Lower Decks
capturing
definitely.
those. Yeah.
And we'll find out what they're gonna have for Starfleet uniforms in Star Trek Prodigy, which is coming out this year on Nickelodeon. So I'm actually kind of curious to see how that's all going to work out too. Speaking of Prodigy, because Kate Mulgrew is back as Catherine Janeway,
Yes.
and apparently William O'Campbell from the Outrageous Okana,
Yeah.
apparently. So it's gonna be interesting to see what's gonna happen with that. So yeah, but definitely. I think we should move on to alien costumes. Um, I want to say this. I really want to say this right now. With the alien uniforms from the original series, it is
Freaking good.
very much 60s.
Yes. So much glitter, so
So much
much
glitter and so much
belly
skin.
dancing outfits and skin. Yeah, mid-dress. It's really drapey pieces. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, definitely. And some of them do scream 60s, but then some of them scream, "Oh, this is futuristic to me," like some of them
Yeah.
do. Yeah, and speaking of the midriffs, with the Mirror Universe episode Mirror Mirror, you got the women wearing these uniforms that have children midriffs, stuff like
Mhm.
that, which was honored in Enterprise, but
Yep.
not in Discovery, thank God.
Yeah,
But
I that always threw me off in the mirror. One for Enterprise, it's like, oh no.
get to see more of that. But then when Discovery came around and stuff like that, they altered them all for Discovery. Like all the people who are commanding are wearing gold and everyone else is wearing black. So,
Yeah,
which I thought the Discovery Mirror Universe uniforms were less comfortable. Like from what I understand, the cast members who did wear those were feeling less comfortable than they were currently wearing. Because it looked like it was painted on them, especially on
tight.
like cast members like Emily Coots who plays Detmer um in Discovery. They're wearing these like plastered on black suits, and I go like, man, you gotta be uncomfortable, and it's stuff like that, and it's crazy, it's stuff like that. I'm glad they altered them for Discovery, and I huge kudos to Gersha Phillips who designed those, and of course Robert Blackman and William Ware Theiss for the original series and the Next
Yeah,
Generation. I mean, he's the one who designed those spandex uniforms for TNG, William Ware Theiss. So, but thankfully in season 3 he was not along anymore, and then it was Robert Blackman, so who
yeah,
designed the uniforms from then on until the end of Enterprise. So, but definitely all three of those people uh, have oh yeah, what's his name? Robert something. I forgot his name now. Robert Blackman. No, no, not Robert Blackman. I forgot his name now. But he was the one who designed the uniforms for. Oh, Robert Fletcher. That's what I'm thinking of. Robert Fletcher, who designed the Starfleet uniforms for the motion picture and the Wrath of Khan, that pretty much became the norm for the rest of the original series uniforms. Um, so all thanks to those people,
yeah.
we wouldn't be talking about them today if it wasn't for their work. So I just want to give them a huge shout out and say thank you to those people. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, definitely. So like other alien costumes,
Yeah. I mean,
I
I think the Vulcans have a pretty consistent
subdued look too.
yeah, their robes and just the ornateness and the shoulder pads. I mean, those kind of carry throughout all all the series.
Hmm.
Like I mean, that's something like they definitely pay really good homage to it, keeping that consistent. The design of the Klingons has changed a few times and like what they wear, going
Yep.
from like something like really heavy armor to like almost looking like scrappy. I don't know, like that has changed.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely for the Klingons when it comes to like they were just wearing this like in the original series they were just wearing these like gray uniforms with like the golden sash, and that changed obviously when the movies started and stuff like that. And that became the look for about 20, 30 years, and then Discovery comes around and goes changes them again. So
Yeah,
to the point where the guest cast members like Mary Chieffo, who plays Laurel and stuff like that in Discovery, have to drink protein shakes and stuff, and
yeah,
so because of the makeup they wear and stuff like that, and the makeup we could talk about another time, but yeah, definitely with the like it changes with their makeup and stuff like that. We could talk about that
yeah.
in
I
another episode.
definitely, I definitely, for any sort of alien fashion in general, Vulcan all the way because I'm a huge fan of shoulder pads. I'm a huge fan of really structured outfits, and they nail that. And I actually used to have my hair cut back at the beginning of when I was in college, about 2013. I had my hair cut in a Vulcan haircut, and
Oh,
the
the
hair
bowl
dyed
cut.
black, scraping, bowl cut, and I was obsessed. I loved it so much.
Yeah.
And always putting shoulder pads into my clothes, being like, yeah, I'm just gonna dress like a Vulcan at this point.
Yeah, speaking of shoulder pads, I know the Romulans do too.
Yeah, oh
Yeah,
yeah, it's like
in TNG they do,
yep.
but
Yeah, they have a very similar like fashion sense too.
yeah, and but the one Romulan uniform I like is actually from the original series, actually, because it's like they're wearing like a really pretty awesome sweater with colored sashes. So it was pretty cool to see that. those colors and stuff like that. I think it was really comfortable to wear, especially if you're out in space, or it'd be kind of cool to wear on a cold day and
Yeah.
in Minnesota. I see
Yeah,
those
they have like a very like quilty look compared to the Vulcans were a lot more like striped, like vertical striped things, like a little more structure that way. But when I think of Romulan uniforms, I think of quilted fabric. Like they got the very quilted look to them, like really thick, almost sweater cozy look to them.
Yeah, definitely. And about other alien races, I'm not a big fan of the Borg uniforms. Not a big
Yeah,
fan
they're
of
kind of
those.
yeah. I mean, they're sort of like consider like the way that they try to make it look is that they're scrapped in their own ways. Like their uniform is based on what
There's a
enhancements they needed, but
Yeah,
it just ends
exactly.
up looking really like someone went and like dumpster dived and like put a bunch of stuff on them. It's great.
Yeah,
The
especially
Borg Queen's uniform is wild though. Like
yes.
the hooking, like how they made it look like we're detaching her upper body from that uniform is wild.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. And then what was the other one I'm thinking of? Like from DS9, I got like the Bajorans, and I like the robes that they wore. I mean, especially with regarding the Vedic Assembly. Like the religious garb that they wore.
Yeah,
Yeah, and that's one thing I actually liked about the Bajorans in Deep Space Nine. And regarding the whole, because it brought religion into Star Trek
yeah.
without it DS9 brought religion into Star Trek without being preachy.
Yeah, I really
So
love the Bajorans, like whole culture that they build off of because
yeah,
we do get a little bit of a dive into each like race's culture a little bit, but not as feel like expanding on things like religion existing because like humanity is our example, obviously. The Vulcans kind of touch a little bit on what religion means then, but in a sense of science, like that's the thing that they like logic and everything is praised. But Bajorans, you get to see how it actually plays into their advancement and their development as a society into the Federation universe, like the Federation galaxy, where they're part of the gang of aliens that get to know each other through contact of the Federation.
yeah,
But
definitely.
it's interesting to see where they're at with their like religious like stance being part of that still.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, and I really don't have, but the one species I think would survive very well in Minnesota from DS9 is the Breen. So, because they have helmets and they don't talk in English. They
Yeah.
have helmets and they talk. Yeah, they have helmets and they don't talk in English. It's like bro, 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 like
Mm.
something like that. But
Yeah.
you can't understand them. And I go like, why didn't the producers of DS9 actually put subtitles?
Yeah.
Because I rewatched
Why?
some of that, some of the later seasons. I mean, especially in the last season when the Dominion War is pretty much ravaging the cold quadrant
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and the Dominion enters an alliance with the Breen, and they speak in their native tongue to the Vorta, and to Wayun, and I'm going like, he understands that?
Yeah.
How the heck does he
Maybe
understand
maybe
that?
their communicators know the language.
Yeah, maybe they do, but I wish, in retrospect, I wish that they had put subtitles.
Yeah.
Maybe if they remaster it, maybe they will. Who knows? Which I hope will happen now when we got Paramount Plus coming. Like
Yeah.
if they want to entice more Star Trek fans, you should probably think about remastering those both Voyager and Voyager and DS9.
Mhm.
But granted, the reason why they haven't is because of the expense.
Yeah. It's a
Because I
lot
mean,
to do with like costume work and things for a
yeah,
show like that. Like I can't imagine all of the development that just goes into making the uniforms. And like even looking at something like the feature of like a holodeck and exploring past times and getting a hold of costumes like that. Like, oh, you're
hmm
gonna travel to like Revolutionary War time France. Okay, so now we have to find like correctly dated outfits or make them ourselves to correctly reflect that time.
Yeah,
And now you
definitely.
suddenly opened up a whole new realm of costume design in a show that's supposed to take place in the future, because now you're having to go and actually study old existing fashions and apply them to the future. And it's what an interesting thing to have to take on. It's daunting.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when with the two Sherlock Holmes episodes from the Next Generation, they probably had to do a little research regarding Victorian London.
Oh yeah.
So, with how they wore things back then, during the era of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So, yeah, definitely it was. I mean, like you're saying, I mean, regarding you have to do extra research. We got this episode in preparation for you. You had to do some research in order to make the costumes correct. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like I said, those people I mentioned, especially Robert Blackman, who was there for at least 14 years doing these costumes and you know doing these costumes on a weekly basis. Especially when you had to design new ones. I mean, come up with them in such a quick amount of time because we had seasons that were 26 episodes a year at the time. Now with this new era, it's only like 10 or 13, but which is okay. I can live with it.
Yeah.
But that's fine as long as we get one episode. I mean, we get one show, then the next show, then the next show, that's the next show. I know that they want to eventually get there regarding Star Trek. They want to have Star Trek on every week of the year. And the only way to do that is to have shorter seasons so they can do, okay, we'll do Picard first, and then we'll do Discovery next, and then we'll do Lower Decks last, which was actually the original plan before COVID.
Yeah.
So,
Throws a damper into
yeah.
development.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what the original plan was. Picard season 1 was going to air first last year, and then it was going to be Discovery season 3, and then it was going to be Lower Decks season 1. So, unfortunately, none of these things were going to happen, and then this changed things for the differently. But
Just rolling with the punches, though.
yeah, exactly.
Still,
And
still
it's going to
doing
be
it.
yep, and it's going to be
Got to be
interesting how
innovative during these times.
yeah, definitely. And now we got five. Speaking of production, we now got 5 series in development, active production. Prodigy, Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds, Picard, and Discovery. Granted, 3 of those are doing extra precautions now due to the pandemic. I mean, they just started filming Picard season 2 this week, from what I understand, and because one of the cast members, I follow most of the cast of Picard on Instagram actually, and I followed. It was Michelle Hurd who plays Raffi. She posted a picture of her binder, and it said Raffi, and it said, I mean,
Yeah.
it said, yeah,
Exciting.
it said Michelle Raffi,
Yep.
and it's like, and she said, going back to work, and it feels so good.
Yeah.
I mean, I really
Some
feel bad.
semblance of normalcy during these times, which will only get better now because of the vaccine. So,
Yeah,
looking
definitely. And
forward
I
to
mean,
it.
I felt really bad. I mean, because if COVID wasn't around, we probably would have had Star Trek. I mean, we would have had Picard season 2 out by now.
Yeah.
Because I mean, the original plan. I mean, talking about production, they were originally planned to start last summer, season 2, but then COVID hit, and then everything went to lockdown in California. So yeah, so definitely. I mean, it's an interesting time. Now we got 5 active series. We're gonna eventually have 5 active
Yeah.
series, which is actually the most in franchise history. So I mean, the most we had was 4, and and that was 94 actually. It was the end of TNG, season 2 of DS9, season 1 of Voyager, and Generations. So, and at any one given point.
Yeah.
All 4 of those were doing at the same time
Yep.
at one
That's a
point.
lot of costume design. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
my God.
I know that's a lot of costume design, and it's gonna be interesting to see what they're gonna plan for because for like for Picard or something like that because now we got this in active production. Like Sir Patrick Stewart said, he went back to the studio a few times when they were about ready to start filming, saying, "I'm going back for costume fittings and stuff like that." So it'll be interesting to see what they're gonna do for him. Anyway, I think that's all. Do you have anything to add?
No, I think we covered what I wanted to talk about, like just the effects of fashion design and costume design throughout all the series, and what our favorite uniforms were, and some of our least favorite uniforms with the crazy things that people have to deal with uniforms. And I think it's good to note that because it's an integral part of the development of these series and how we remember them. So,
Yes, definitely. So anyway, I think we should end this one, and
oh yeah,
yeah, definitely. So okay, so I'm gonna preview episode 4, which will be next week. We're gonna be talking about the good, the bad, and possibly the ugly of Star Trek fandom. So take care and live long and prosper.
live long and prosper, guys.